Good morning. Pastor Mike is in Ontario this morning, filling in out there at the Calvary Chapel of Ontario. So, while the cat's away, the mice will play. All right? Now, this morning, we're going to be looking at Joshua chapter 14, specifically a story about a man named Caleb, and the historical account of an opportunity that was in front of him to make a decision, a very, very important life-altering decision. Those come up for us every now and again, don't they? These opportunities in life, these moments in life, where we have, it seems like, 2 or 3 or 4 open doors. They're rare, aren't they? So often we're praying, we're begging just for one door. Somewhere, something, Lord, give me something to go with here. Lord, show me which way you want me to go. And sometimes it takes a while for that door to open. Sometimes it takes a while for that direction to come. And that's okay. We ought to learn to wait at times. But sometimes, every now and again, it just seems like the options are overwhelming. And that's what we're looking at this morning. That's the situation faced with Caleb, or that Caleb was faced with this morning. Now, before we get into Joshua, by way of introduction, we're actually going to start in the book of Numbers. The book of Numbers, chapter 13. We'll be starting in verse 25. As you're turning there, give you a little background. This is after the Exodus. This is after Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt, across the Red Sea, through the desert, brought them right up to the banks of the River Jordan. Now, across the River Jordan is the Promised Land. All they have to do is cross that river, drive out the inhabitants, and that Promised Land is theirs. That's where they're at. So they land there on the banks of the river, and Moses, smart, strategic man, says we're going to send in some spies to figure out where we should go first, what we should do first, whom we'll need to conquer first, what is going to be our list of priorities, and what do we have to look forward to. So he takes these 12 guys, 12 strong, brave men, sends them across the river, says you have a 40-day mission. Go out, see what you can see, come back and tell us. So these 12 guys, they cross the river, they go out into all of the Promised Land. They make a very wide circle, exploring, seeing things, figuring things out, trying to take notes on things, trying to discern things. They come back and they give the report to Moses. Now, of these 12 guys, there were 2 guys named Caleb and Joshua. And these 2 guys would stand out, as we'll see in our text. Numbers 13, verse 25. At the end of the 40 days, they returned from spying out the land. And they came to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. And they told him, "We came to the land to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and their cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negeb. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea along the Jordan." But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it." Then the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are." So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people that we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw Nephilim, or giants, the sons of Anak, who came from the Nephilim, and we seemed to them like grasshoppers in their sight." Caleb and his partner Joshua, they brought a good report to Moses. The other 10 were scared out of their sandals. And they simply said, it's impossible. It's impossible. Yes, the land is flowing with milk and honey. Yeah, the pastures are green. Yes, the fruit is big and bountiful. It's great for farming. Yeah, there's water there. Yes, there's cities there. But those cities are fortified. Boy, those walls are big. Their armies are big. The people are big. There's giants there. There's no way we can do that. Now, Caleb and Joshua, they were in the minority, obviously. 2 against 10 is not really a fair fight. And so, the children of Israel decided not to go. And so what God would do was, He would keep the children of Israel camped there on the banks of the Jordan, right across from the Promised Land, for 40 years. For 40 years, and that entire generation, that entire faithless generation would die off. Except for 2 guys, Caleb and Joshua. Now Joshua would become the successor to Moses. So he would become the new leader of the children of Israel. Caleb's story is a little bit quiet until we get to our text here in Joshua chapter 14. Go ahead and turn there. So for 40 years, the children of Israel have been camping in the dust. They've been hurting for food. They've been thirsting for water. They've been trying to make some sort of living out of the desert on the one side of the Jordan. All the while, they should have been farming in the Promised Land. They should have been building houses. They should have been establishing cities. They should have been living in the fullness of everything that God had for them. 40 years go by. And then they decide it's time to go. Joshua takes the men, takes the children of Israel, leads them across the Jordan. They land in a little spot, they call it Gilgal. Just on the other side of the river there. That's their base camp. And from there, they would begin their campaign to fight against the cities that were there. They start with Jericho. They start to move sort of a wide swath all across the land there. And they drive out most, not all, but most of the inhabitants there. God gives them victory after victory. There's some setbacks along the way. It's an incredible story. If you enjoy adventure novels, read the book of Joshua. They drive out almost all the inhabitants. There are some that are just too difficult to get to. There are some that are just too scary to go up against. There are some that are just too crafty and too savvy politically. They drive out most of the inhabitants. They've won the battles. They've conquered the Promised Land. They come back to Gilgal, their base camp. And now is the time to start dividing up that land. You see, the children of Israel are in tribes. And so each tribe is going to get their own inheritance of land, their own chunk of land. Now, while that's happening, Caleb approaches Joshua. Verse 6, the children of Judah came to Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said to him, you know the word which the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me in Kadesh Barnea? I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought back word to him as it was in my heart. Nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed the Lord my God. So Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land where your foot has trodden shall be your inheritance, and your children's forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, ever since the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel wandered in the wilderness, and now here I am, this day, 85 years old. As yet I am as strong this day as on the day that Moses sent me. Just as my strength was then, so now is my strength for war, both for going out and for coming in. Now, therefore, give me this mountain of which the Lord spoke in that day. For you heard in that day how the Anakim were there, and that the cities were great and fortified. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said. So Caleb approaches Joshua. He says, listen, Joshua, we have some business to take care of here. Joshua, you remember 40 years ago, 40 plus years, 45, it took the children of Israel 5 years to conquer that land and get back to Gilgal. He says, you remember 45 years ago when we went to spy out that land. And we believed that God would do great things through us. But the faithlessness of everyone else held us back. You remember the promise that Moses made to me? Joshua says, yeah. Caleb says, yeah. I can have anything I want. Anywhere that I went can be my inheritance. Joshua says, okay. What do you want? Now, Caleb, 85 years old. He's put in his time. He exercised his faith. He waited those 40 years. He fought alongside the children of Israel as an old man, 80 years old. He went into battle after battle, after battle, after battle with Israel. He survived. He helped conquer the land. They come back now. Caleb, where do you want to live? Caleb, it's your blank check. All the doors are open, Caleb. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Pick out your little slice of heaven, Caleb. Now, every now and then, as I was saying before, we have these opportunities in life where the options seem unlimited. And honestly, it's in those moments where we have to make the most crucial decisions. It seems as though those should be the easiest things to decide. Those should be the simplest decision to make. But be careful. Be careful because you have an opportunity. We have opportunities in those times to go the easy way or to go the hard way. It would be logical for Caleb. It would be right for Caleb to look across the land and say, you know what? Give me that green, lush valley down there. The one with the river and the streams and all the trees. I'll take that. Or maybe Caleb says, there was a place on the shores of the Mediterranean. Beautiful place. White beaches, rocky cliffs, excellent weather. Give me that for my inheritance. It would be easy. It would seem right. It would seem logical. Caleb could easily say, I've put in my time. I've done enough for God. I've fought all the fights. It's time for me to get mine. But instead, Caleb said, do you remember that mountain? That mountain with the giants on it? That mountain with the fortified cities? That well-defended, strong, gigantic mountain. Give me that. Give me that mountain. I can have anything. I can have anywhere. But I'm not going to pick the easy way. I'm not going to relax. I don't want to be comfortable. That is so foreign to us, isn't it? To me, it makes no sense. Because in my mind, when I have so many options in front of me, I very often believe that the easiest way is the Lord's way. Right? Well, Lord, of all of these options, this way is the easiest. This must be the way that you want me to go. Everything lines up logically. Everything makes sense. Everything is taken care of for me that way. Why would I even consider doing that? Thank you, Lord, for giving me the easy way. But sometimes, probably more often than not, the Lord might be waiting for us to do the hard things. The beautiful thing about what Caleb says there, in verse 12, at the end of verse 12, he says, it may be, it might be that the Lord will be with me. Caleb is very aware that he could fail. Caleb knows that. Caleb understands he's making a conscious decision to take a risk. But in Caleb's mind, it's not a gamble. It is not a gamble. It might be that the Lord will be with me and I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said. Remember, the Lord said, I want the inhabitants gone. They were a wicked people. They were wicked nations. They worshipped in grotesque ways and they did horrible things. And God says, I want to give you that promised land to get rid of that, to cleanse the land, to purge the land of that. But they didn't do it. They didn't do it all. They conquered, but they didn't drive everyone out. Why? Because there were giants up on a mountain in fortified cities that were well defended. And so they walked around it. They left that mountain there. It was easier to go around it. And that's logical. That's the world's wisdom. Isn't it? Why fight that battle? Why are you doing that? Why would you go that way? Don't you see it's so much easier to go this way? Don't you see it would be so much simpler to just do that? Don't you need to put yourself first? Don't you need to focus on you right now and take the easy way, go around it? Why would you do that? But you see, to Caleb, this real estate, this land, this was not just a business decision. This was not just, where do I want a vacation? To Caleb, this had everything to do with faith. This had everything to do with the will of the Lord. This had everything to do with serving the Lord. And Caleb says, it's a difficult way, but perhaps the Lord would use me to accomplish that in His will. Perhaps the Lord would use me to drive out those giants, to conquer that mountain and to take it over. Now, for a moment, we have to consider exactly what Caleb is up against here. Gilgal, elevation is about 300 feet below sea level. The mountain that he's referring to, Mount Hebron, is about 3,000 feet above sea level. Caleb, you want to make a 3,000-foot climb. Hebron, that mountain, is about, as the crow flies, it's about 30 miles from Gilgal. Now, he couldn't fly, and there were no roads or highways. He would have to walk that, hike that, anywhere from 50 to 80 miles. Caleb, you're going to have to go farther. Caleb, you're going to have to climb higher. Caleb, you're going to have to fight harder. The Anakim are there. The sons of Anak are there. They're giants. Now, giant is debatable. The name Anak, or the Anakim, the name Anak simply means long-necked. But there was something interesting in verse 33 of chapter 13 of Numbers where we got in. It says the 12 spies. It says, it refers to these children of Anak, it refers to them as Nephilim. Now, Genesis chapter 6, right before Noah's flood, tells us that, the earth had grown exceedingly wicked. And part of that wickedness, part of the reason that God had to destroy it was because the daughters of earth, the human women, had become the wives of some sort of angelic beings, or perhaps I should say demonic beings, had come down to earth and had taken these earthly women as wives, had laid with them and had conceived and bore a new race that the Bible simply calls Nephilim, often often translated as giants. Now, I'm not going to get weird with you here. That's not my intention. But there's something interesting in Greek mythology. In Greek mythology speaks of this deity named Gaia. Now, Gaia was the female personification of the earth. So she represented the earth. And there was this male deity you've heard of, Uranus. Uranus was the representation of, or the personification of, the heavens, the sky. And in their mythology, what happens is Uranus comes from the heavens and the sky, and he marries Gaia, who is of the earth. And they conceive a son, and the name of that son is Anak. And Anak was a giant. Weird. Two distinct cultures, two distinct histories, two distinct mythologies, and yet the same story. Now, because of that, because of mythologies and stories, many people, many learned people, many smart people would simply conclude this Bible is some of it is just more mythology. And that this idea of giants on the mountain is just fairy tale. And that perhaps the people of Anak or the Anakim never even existed. But really they were just sort of thought up and written into the story as a way of propaganda, just to make the Israelites or the ancient Hebrews seem more heroic. Make them bigger and larger than life because they defeated these giants. There really were no Anak, there were no giants. Oddly enough, interestingly enough, about 75 years ago, archaeologists, good old archaeologists who go digging for the truth, archaeologists discovered and published what were known as the execration texts of Egypt. Now, these execration texts, what they were, the pharaohs during that time in history had a custom. It was a form of witchcraft. What they would do is they would take the names of their enemies, both political and national. They would write them on these little stone tablets or on these little stone figurines. And then they would take these tablets that represented their enemies and they would stomp on them and break them and burn them. And it was supposed to be sort of a voodoo thing, right? Well, so shall this be done to you. Curse these our enemies. And they would break these tablets. Well, they dug these tablets up, broken, pieced them back together. And guess whose names are written on those tablets? In Egyptian, it says Anak, or the people of Anak. And it even lists leaders among the people of the Anakim. They were a very real people. They were a very formidable foe, so much so that the Egyptians, the greatest nation in the world at that time, were so afraid of them that they would want to curse them with any sort of magic that they could. Interesting. That is who Caleb is up against. Now, so often in the Bible, although the Bible is historical, it's also applicable. And oftentimes in the Bible, when you see giants, giants are, most importantly, simply a representation of, or a picture of, our inadequacies. Do you get that? Because when you stand against the giant, what you will understand is how much smaller you are, how much weaker you are, how inadequate that you are. And so in the Bible, when you see giants, it's a picture of our inadequacies, or in this case, it's a picture of Caleb's inadequacies. He's not big enough. He's not strong enough. Remember Caleb, or remember David, remember David against the giant Goliath. He was not big enough. He was not strong enough. He was not a warrior. Caleb, you're inadequate for that. Caleb, you cannot win that battle. Caleb, why on earth would you hike that far, to make that climb, to fight that fight. And the cities, again, they're fortified, they're defended, they're on the higher ground, they have the advantage. Caleb, you're going to have to outsmart them. How can you do that? We couldn't do it the first time. And suddenly this all begins to make a lot more sense. Suddenly this all begins to apply so much more to our lives when we have those decisions to make. And we think it's the easy thing to go the easy way, and that might be the way of the Lord. That might be the Lord's will. But really, this might be an opportunity for God to show us our inadequacies, to have us deal with our inadequacies, to have us go further, to have us climb higher, to have us fight harder, to have us fight smarter. There are things in your life that are worth fighting for. Caleb believed this mountain Hebron was worth fighting for. Caleb knew that this mountain was worth fighting for. In Genesis chapter 23, you can turn there if you'd like, otherwise you can just tune in. Genesis 23, it's the story of Sarah, Abraham's wife. It's the story of Sarah's death. Genesis 23:1 says, Sarah lived 127 years, and these were the years of the life of Sarah. So she died in Kirjath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And then Abraham stood up from before his dead. And he spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a foreigner and a visitor among you. Give me property for a burial place among you, that I may bury the dead out of my sight. And the sons of Heth answered, and Abraham saying to him, Hear us, Lord, you are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our burial places. None of us will withhold from you this burial place, that you may bury your dead. Then Abraham stood up, bowed himself to the people of the land, the sons of Heth, and he spoke with them, saying, If it is your wish that I bury my dead out of my sight, hear me. Meet with Ephron the son of Zorah for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he has at the end of his field, and let him give it to me at the full price, as a property for the burial place among you. Now Ephron dwelt with the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the presence of the sons of Heth, and all who entered the gate of the city, saying, No, my lord, hear me. I give you the field and the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of the sons of my people. I give it to you. Bury your dead. Then Abraham bowed himself down before the people of the land. He spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people, and he said, If you will give it, please hear me, I will give you money for it. Take it from me, and I will bury my dead there. Ephron answered Abraham, saying to him, My lord, listen to me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver, but what is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out the silver of Ephron, which is named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. So the field of Ephron, which is in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field and the cave which is in it, and all the trees that were in it, which were within the surrounding borders, were deeded to Abraham as a possession in the presence of the sons of Heth, before all who went at the gate of the city. Caleb knew that mountain, on that mountain, we have land that was purchased by our, in a sense, earthly father Abraham, our descendant. That mountain is not just a mountain for us to fight for. It's not just a mountain for us to conquer. It's not just a mountain for us to overtake. That mountain is our inheritance. It was purchased for us with a price. That is our mountain. That difficult thing very well may be your possession. It might be your inheritance, and it is worth fighting for. Perhaps it's your marriage. It is worth fighting for. But it's a mountain, and the fight is, there's giants. I am too inadequate for that. It's too much of a climb. I can't do that. She's way up on that mountain. He's way up on that mountain. And the world would say to you, then let her be there. Let her stay there. Let him stay there. Go around it. It's time to focus on you. Forget about that mountain. But the Lord would say no. Perhaps the Lord would say, no, you go farther, climb higher, fight harder. Take back that possession. That's yours. That relationship with your children, that mountain to overcome. The relationship perhaps with a family member or a friend, perhaps the salvation of a loved one. It's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting for. It's not easy. But just as Caleb said, it might be that the Lord would use you to win that battle, to win back that possession. Now, this is all very motivating, perhaps, I hope. This is all very inspiring. This is all very thought-provoking. But before you get too excited, I need to burst your bubble. You can try and go farther. You can try and fight harder. You can try and climb higher. You can try and be smarter. But you will fail. I've fallen from many mountains. I know you have too. Why? Because in and of ourselves, we cannot win those battles. We are faced with giants. In other words, we are inadequate. We are not big enough. We are not strong enough. We are not smart enough. We cannot win that mountain. We can't win that fight. But it's not up to us. It's not up to us. You know why? Because a long time ago, another man climbed another mountain. His name was Jesus. And he climbed a mountain called Calvary. And it was not an easy climb. Every step was agony. And he fought on the mountain of Calvary. He fought a battle that only God himself could win. And he won. And he won not just for your salvation, not just for your life, for life eternal, but for access. For access to the grace of God, so that we can, the Bible says, boldly come before him. In other words, completely unhindered, come before him. We have access to him now. We have access to the Father. And it is his strength now that we rely upon. Paul understood that. Paul got it, and he said it so perfectly, so eloquently. He said it to the Corinthians in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10. He said, I take pleasure in my weaknesses, my inadequacies, and in the insults and the hardships and the persecution and the troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Your marriage is worth fighting for. Your relationships are worth fighting for. Your children are worth fighting for. But understand, guys, it's not your fight. It's the Lord's. And he won it. And he purchased that victory. Not with 400 pieces of silver, but with his blood. And our responsibility in all of that is to be like Caleb, to have the faith, to follow through, to continue on. It's not about our works. It's not about getting it done. It's not about clenching our teeth and making it happen. It's about relying on him. The battle, it starts on your knees. It starts in prayer. Continual prayer. And it's an attitude of victory that says, I'm not going to take the easy way and just hope and pray that the giants don't come down and get me later on. No. It starts on your knees. It starts in prayer, and it's faithfulness, and it's, Lord, perhaps today is the day. Perhaps tomorrow. Perhaps, Lord, you'll use me. The victory is already ours. The inheritance is already ours. It's already been purchased for us. Let's pray.